G'day, mate. Welcome to Friday Facts 290, rail building changes and high-res icons. And I've got a wild mojo with me. Hey, mate.
Hello.
Yeah, it took me hours to track him down this time. I had to go catch him out in the Australian wilderness first. Yep.
Yes.
So we've got some rail changes and some high-res icons. And the rail changes, I honestly believe 99% of people will be really, really happy with this. I think me and Mojo somewhat belong in the 1%.
For me, it was always a case of I wanted it in one rail mode. Like, I had it in one rail mode, and I really wanted it.
Yes, it was... Okay, so we'll go through it first. The problem with rail building is it has too many states. It depends on whether you start building on a rail with shift to use ghost mode or not. And it also matters whether you still hold shift to ignore trees or not. Moving to manual building... From manual building to ghost rail building means cancelling the whole rail building and start it again with the correct modifier. So you could ghost down a certain amount and then swap to physically placing rail and then go back to ghosting. But it was a little bit tricky, I guess is probably the best way of putting it. And then Twinson drew this nice little diagram with these 6 different states of ghost railing. And I'm sure the guy should be a doctor because that looks like doctor's handwriting to me.
I've been trying to read it, and I have no idea what he says.
Manual rail planner, ghost rail planner with tree, ignore, ghost rail planner with something, ghost rail planner with something out, ignore trees. Yeah. There's 6 different states, according to Twinson. I'll take his word for it. So what actually happened is there was a bug report back in 1716, which basically said that if you had a ghost rail planner in version 17 and you held shift to ghost over a rock, it'd go no. And you had to go back to bringing it back up as a proper ghost rail planner and move forth, and it would then delete it, which was the way it's been since like 13, right, Mojo? Where we
Pretty much, yeah. We've been...
I think it was 13, when we went 13 to 14, we removed from having a straight rail and a curved rail to having...
Oh, that was 13. 13 was the big rail overhaul.
Yeah, so
and
then
it gave you the rail snake.
Yeah, so then we went to the magic rail that we have now that is straight or curved or whatever, uses the exact same crafted item, and then the game just works out how much rail you need to put down to make a curve. So yeah, from now on, there'll be 3 modes: building manually, ghost building, and ghost building plus tree rock removal. So that's the old mode. Yeah, the new one will only have 2 modes, even though Twinson up here said there's actually 6 different types.
That's actually a state diagram, so that would include transitioning for other things.
Okay.
So actual commands or actions that occur in the game.
Okay, so yeah, we've got building manually, ghost building, and ghost building plus demolish everything that's in your way. So now we've only got 2 modes, one being ghost building without obstacle deconstruction. Oh yeah, so ghost building without obstacle deconstruction is not available anymore. So it doesn't matter anymore how you start the building, it just matters whether you're holding shift or not at the moment, which makes it consistent with the normal entity building and ghost icon. So it makes a little bit more sense, I guess, now, for new players at least.
Yeah. It's interesting, actually, thinking of that. I noticed that quite a few people said there was 3 rail laying modes. They didn't even know about like the shift ghost one.
Oh, to demolish everything, or
just to ghost it down in general.
Oh, okay.
And then the shift to demolish.
Okay.
I thought they had to place it all down manually.
Oh wow.
Click and drag style.
Oh wow. Yeah. No. The rail planner it's a double-edged sword. It's great in some respects, although it has a habit of doing curves and snakes the way it wants to do it, which is probably not the way you want it to happen.
That's what R and Shift R is for.
Yeah, that seems like the only way to fix it, but it still, you go around a nice gentle curve and it decides it wants to do a loop-de-loop in the middle just because reasons.
That's what the R and Shift R does, because you can define where the endpoint is, what orientation
you can define
the endpoint is.
the angle of the endpoint, which then hopefully fixes things. It's been how it has been for a long time, and it's one of those things. Have the player fix it rather than have the code fix it, because yeah, it does weird things. But anyway, so They introduced, as we've already covered, the new rail builder in 13 into 14, or was it partway through 13? One of the two. I know in 14 it was definitely the new style. So the new plan is that rail won't be used to build straight rails normally the way you can now. The rail item would always use to build a rail planner only. Instead of having to snap to an existing rail, you just start building anywhere on the ground. And instead of showing the rail preview window when holding the item, you'd see the arrow as when starting the rail building. Then you could rotate it with the R key. It would make sense and make the arrow color size different when starting a rail planner on the ground versus snapping to an existing rail. But other than that, so would be the same. So they're planning on iterating it again. And I think this is the one part I sort of like, because at the moment you have to physically either place or ghost down a rail piece to start from, as shown in our lovely little GIF here. Whereas they're talking about in the future, you could just hover a rail piece anywhere and it'll either point left or right or up or down, and you could press R to rotate to the right way you want, and then just start building from that point.
Yeah.
It's a little...
I think that'll take a little bit to get used to.
It'll probably take a little bit to get used to for veteran players, but I think for new players especially, that it's going to be a great thing. Because I know how frustrating it is, especially when I'm out in the middle of nowhere or blueprinting halfway across the map. I hate the fact that I have to put down a piece of rail to start with, to then ghost from that point to start from. Yeah, it's annoying. So, the biggest change that both me and Mojo, and this is probably why we're in the 1%, is the old 3 states were manually building rail, ghosting rail going around obstacles, and ghosting rail going through obstacles. We've got rid of the ghosting going around obstacles, which means if you shift clip through a cliff, even if you don't have cliff explosives, it's going to go through the cliff or the forest or whatever you might have. But if you don't have robots, clearing a forest is a real pain in the ass. And you don't have...
Well, if you're ghosting, it's assumed that you have bots anyway.
Yeah, it does, but... Like, I've done it many times. I've been like, I want to go from that outpost back to home base. Just draw me a magic rail connection from there to there, going in and around cliffs and all sorts of things, and the game will just calculate the rail direction. And then I can either run along and have what limited bots I have on my modular armor build it, and maybe clear the occasional tree, or I can hand build it, which is what normally happens. I hand build most of it and let trees get demolished by bots, because... the old Ghost Planner would choose the route that has the least amount of obstacles. So
yeah, we'll try and go around.
Yeah, it would try going around a forest and pick off 5 trees around the outside, rather than go through the middle of a forest, or go completely around a forest and not even pick off 5 dead trees. So you didn't get straight rail, but you know it was an option, and it's the one I really like for probably my first rail track and my second rail track. From that point on, there's a good chance that I have maybe Power Armor Mark 1 with robots and cliff explosives, and I have all that crap on me, so it doesn't really matter. I'll go through a cliff. But yeah, I've checked the forums, and there's been a couple of people who said the exact same thing, that they like that state just for that point of the game. You know, from there on, it doesn't matter, and they're happy with this change. This is the one they want to use. And I'm the same, from sort of that mid-late game, like get Power Armor Mark 1, Power Armor Mark 2 onwards, I don't ever want to place rails the old way and go around the forest. I'm going through the middle of the forest.
Out of the way for trees, I'm coming through.
Yeah. I don't know if this will cover going through a lake. That's something I haven't tested. Only because I generated a world that just didn't happen to have any water.
That's something I haven't really played around with.
So, you know, it might start saying go through the middle of the lake, and unfortunately we all know how much landfill you need. So yeah,
it's also a bit wonky doing landfill.
It is. So then we've got the high-res icons. Now, the current... The GUI in 16 was not really scalable. I know Mojo played with the scale a little bit to bump it up for streaming, and you were going at, what, 113% from memory?
117.
There we go. I was close. And because it was such a small increase and there wasn't a lot of steps, it was sort of okay, and it would just stretch everything out slightly. But now we've got a proper scalable GUI where the devs are basically running into a few new problems. So the first thing they've had to do is they've had to take all the pixels from 32 pixels up to 64 pixels, which is great. It gives them more data to play with and should smooth out the zooming. But they've come up with this problem, and I need the graphics, I need the video to reset. So we've got the 3 assembly machines being level 1, level 2, level 3. They're fine, they show up in the belt fine. We've got the new graphic they're proposing possibly for the large power poles.
Yeah.
But as you can see, as it zooms out, it gets a little bit weird. And then we have these 3, 4 random graphics that they've thrown on the belt, which are grey, but as we zoom out, turn blue.
Yeah, as the dithering kicks in.
Yep, and then as we zoom out further, they turn red. Yeah, blue, red, they're grey again, yep. It's something that they have to work on, and it's purely that they're being resized so much that the clarity that you had in those little pixels is gone. You've gone from having something that's 8 pixels wide on a belt down to 3 pixels, and
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, the colors just end up merging into a mess. So where are we? I'm going to swap to the second screen for this one. So yeah, we've got the icons placed on the belt. For the maximum zoom level of 3.053, we're still at 76% of our 64 pixel icon size. So at maximum zoom, they've got plenty of, you know, they've actually got too many pixels for what's drawn on the belt. But at the minimum zoom level, we're only talking about 10% of the original icon size, and that's why we have these weird messes.
Yeah.
To solve the problem for making it work, in all situations, we design the icons in a very synthetic way. We simplify the shape to the purest meaning, like the case of the assembly machines, where one gear plus the color indicates the levels. So we have assembler 1 with 1 gear and grey, assembler 2 with 2 gears, blue, and then assembler 3 with 3 interlocking gears and yellow. And
that's caused probably the most rage that I've seen so far.
Yeah, that's been the most upvoted topic. That there's 3 gears and they're all interlocking. And what people don't realise is the gear in the top left, it's actually sunk down slightly, but it just doesn't appear that way because of the 45-degree offset top-down view that Factorio has. It's actually like the bottom left touches the right-hand side gear, and neither of them interact with the top left-hand gear. Trust us, okay? He's an engineer. I'm not. So yeah, that's our answer. So yeah, the solution works, but they have a lot of icons. Around about 350.
Penrose gears.
What?
Penrose's gears.
Okay, it's an engineering joke, I bet.
You know the impossible staircase? It's called the Penrose stairs.
Oh, okay.
Penrose gear.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, look, I'd believe it. So yeah, they got about 355 icons, and many of them are very complex in their shape or meaning. They work fine. So they're looking at making simpler entities. And they work for any zoom level, even 128 pixels, but other entities like the big electric pole is more complicated to keep this level of minimalism due to the fact the shape is already complicated in its essence. If we make it less complex, we won't be able to recognize it anymore. So this is the power pole in-game, and this is the proposed new one, which we haven't actually seen yet in-game, because they updated to the latest version of Factorio just to confirm. And they're talking about possibly having this is max zoom, this is normalish zoom, this is tiny zoom. And you can see when we go back up to this video, that's the one that they've actually put on the belt, the tiny itty bitty shitty graphic. And I don't mind it. Or is it, did they put the middle one on? I can't remember now. Come on, video, reset. One thingy sticking out. Okay, so they've put actually neither of those on the belt, just to complicate things.
Of course.
Yeah, the possible solution would be to use a very minimalistic flat icon. This wouldn't be integrated as an object chosen in the world. We don't like that option. The other solution is using MIP maps. So we use different versions of the same icon optimized for different zoom levels. We would notice the change of version at a certain zoom level. And for solving it, we must complicate the situation. This complication would not just be for the code to create some crazy cross-fading effect, but also for the designers to keep several versions of the icon close enough not to feel the change. And that's why you got 3 power poles. Like they're very, very close to one another. The big one has the rear power, the rear beams, I guess.
Yeah,
you can sort of see that. Yep. The second one, they're pretty much all gone. And then the third one, we've simplified it again. We've made it very, very flat. And we've removed half the graphics. But you can still see that it's sort of a large power pole.
We'd just go with the third one, realistically. You don't need the
realistically,
detail to simplify.
There's iron, copper, steel, plastic, green circuits, red circuits, blue circuits, all those things that they don't actually exist as a building on the map, right? And the prime example would be miners. I've seen lots of bases that have put miners on a belt. Because
I used to have to put them on a belt for
blue
science.
Yeah, and I couldn't tell it was a miner on a belt. Hell, even the assembly machine, you can't really see that there's a miner in the alt image on an assembly machine, just because miners don't have a lot of graphics in their little, 32 by 32 pixel button.
It's a lot of detail to put in that thing.
Well, they don't have a lot of detail to start with, because they're a square box with a thing down the middle. There really isn't that much, and that's always been the thing with miners. And I really think at the end of the day, like, everybody knows where, or you can look at any base and you can see where copper, iron, green circuits, blue circuits, all the basic materials are. And then for weird things that people put on a belt, like a large power pole, you're probably going to zoom in and go, what the hell is... Oh, it's a large power pole, because it's not something people put on a belt normally. I admit there's plenty of crazy people out there that put weird and wonderful things on belts. I've seen trains on belts. I've seen cars, both actual cars and the car that an assembler can actually move on a belt. Tanks. I've seen everything on a belt. And I think really at the end of the day, you don't really need to be able to, like, at 3, whatever the zoom out is, at 10% of the icon size, at minimum zoom level, 10% of the icon size, you don't need to be able to see what's on the belts. You can
usually at that zoom level, you can't see what's going on anyway.
No,
you can only make out just by color.
Yeah, and that's really what happens. Like, nobody at that zoom level can tell the difference between steel and plastic, because they're too close. And that's what it really comes down to. I don't know. I think that in some ways making a mountain out of a molehill, it doesn't really seem like a problem to me, on my opinion only, I'm
all about the simplifying icons though, because things like particularly the big power pole is so complicated, it doesn't shrink down.
Yeah, look, I agree. Making 3 graphics. Making 3 different levels of graphics for different zoom levels for different things would be my answer. Don't worry about transitions. Just at some point, you're going to go from this zoom level to that zoom level, and all the icons are going to change. Chances are they're so small anyway that you're probably not going to notice that difference. Only if you're looking for it. So, especially from the large version to the middle version, you're not going to see that difference. Going from there down to the really flattened one, like, if the zoom's out far enough, you probably won't notice. So, yeah.
You're not going to recognize most of them anyway.
Yeah, pretty much. Again, a mountain out of a molehill. I like the idea that they're putting thought into it, but yeah, I think they're just stretching things too far. So yeah, they want to be pragmatic, and I bet for the Uniside solution base in proper synthesis. So they want to stick with their current solution, they hope. But it's not going to be easy for sure, like the entire history of Factorio development. Yeah, none of this has been easy. They've done a lot of firsts when it comes to this style of game. And they've done a great job. But yeah, I think this might be taking it just one step too far.
It has potential, but it has potential to do good things, but a lot of potential to do the wrong thing too.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I think... I don't know. I've done a lot of base tours, and I walk around bases, and I have no idea what's on the belts until I physically go over there or zoom in far enough that I can identify items. And that's the other thing. Like, most people have radars everywhere now, because you can just zoom in on map view. You can zoom in on the 8th belt down because you have no idea what it is and go, oh wow, somebody's put pumps on a belt, because reasons. You know,
reasons.
They're running some stupid mod that needs pumps on the belt. You know, for some production. So okay, sure, whatever. But that's one of the things. Like, I wouldn't know what a pump on a belt looks like, because I actually don't think I've ever seen somebody put pumps on a belt. I'm trying to think of all the weird things that are in Factorio, and I've seen signals, I've seen trains, I've seen all the different power poles, substations, all that sort of crap. But I don't remember seeing pumps, both the offshore pump and the standard pump on a belt ever. So, you know, yeah, I don't know. That's my rant. Anything you want to add, Mojo?
Nope, that's everything.
No, we've ran enough. Okay, so that's it for this Friday Facts. Thank you guys very much for watching, and we'll see you next week. Yeah, next week for
in the next one.
291. We're getting so close to 300. It's
big 3.
Yeah, coming up close. Coming up quickly. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next week. All right, bye.
Bye.